So thank you very much for agreeing to do this. And again, apologies for the previous. I seem to be starting all my videos at the moment apologizing for being late for the prior ones, which is not a good sign. But thank you so much for agreeing to do this. So the question I usually ask at the beginning is sort of, what was your journey that led you to joining the Street Epistemology Discord server?
Well, I mean, obviously with like pandemic, like right before pandemic, I had gone to like a physical meetup group, like people were there practicing together.
Street Epistemology?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
I'm in Los Angeles.
Great.
Angeles. There's this person, their name Reed.
Reed, I don't know Reed.
Oh, I don't remember their last name.
I do know Reed, sadly, but
but he's pretty active here in LA. He has some of those like tables that he puts out like in a public place.
Yeah,
I think it's called Cordial Curiosity.
That's it.
Yeah, and
so did you meet him before the meetup then, or did you go to one of his events then?
Yeah, I went to the meetup first.
Okay.
And that's where I met him. And then I figured out he had that channel eventually.
Got you.
They recommended me to read some books, and I read the books that they recommended. I think my favorite one was How to Have Difficult Conversations.
How to Have Impossible Conversations.
Impossible Conversations, yeah. That
gotcha.
Orange book.
Peter Boghossian.
Yeah, that one. And I felt like that one was the most helpful. I think that when I joined the meetup epistemology group, I don't think I had like the right intentions or I understood it completely. But then reading the books, I realized that it was learning how to do that was more for me than for anyone else. Yeah,
that's cool. That's a good way to look at it, I think, for sure.
And then so I found the Discord eventually, and I just look around and read at what people talk about, because I really don't understand how I can like insert myself into one of the conversations, but I like to read through everyone's responses most of the time.
Oh, yes, it can feel intimidating. I mean, the obvious answer really is just jump in and don't worry about it. But that's not always as easy as it is to say. So you were looking for, you were looking up, is it meetup.com did you use to find the meetup group? Mm-hmm. So what was it about the Street Epistemology meetup Discord, meetup group that made you think, that's one I want to attend?
So I probably mentioned it in like my introduction that I was part of like a high control group. I was I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, like the people that like knock on doors and are always trying to convert everyone.
Gotcha.
It is a doomsday cult in essence. You do think the end of the world is coming.
Right.
I was born into that, so I really didn't know any better.
Right.
At some point, I realized that there was so many flaws in their like prophecies and teachings. And so I had to eventually leave because I just couldn't live with myself anymore. I felt like a really big void in my life because I realized that a lot of those things were like not true. One of the things that pulled me out of like a lot of their teachings was like going to museums, reading other books that wasn't their assigned reading, that was, I did it innocently, like, naively thinking like, oh, if this is the truth, I'm going to find the real answers. Right. Because like history will, support what God says. But of course it doesn't because it's, all made up, but I didn't know any better. And so eventually when I left, it led to like to this day, it's a very tumultuous relationship with like my parents, my brother, because they're still very dedicated to that religion or that cult. I also have family in Mexico that are very involved in it. And I thought that if I learned how to reason with them, I can pull them out too. But I mean, that's really not the case, like people are going to believe what they want to believe, like no matter what. But also in all this thing, I realized that I don't know how to I didn't feel like I had critical thinking skills. And I think epistemology did really help me with that.
That's awesome. Wow. That's a lot of really amazing things all at once. Okay, cool. Can I ask you a little bit about your Jehovah's Witness experiences then? So you were born, definitely. Your parents are Jehovah's Witnesses. When did you start to find yourself moving away from the religion? I guess because being born into it, I guess it's such an understandable thing, adopting the religion of your parents, and it's such a hard thing to do. And I imagine, I say this all the time, I don't know that I'd be able to do that. Like having been brought up, being told it was true and having parents that believed it, I think it takes a huge amount of self-confidence and conviction and honesty to leave a religion that you've grown up with. So how did that happen for you? How did you mentioned going to museums, but so was that the start of it, do you think? Or
so I think a lot of it had to do with me just like always feeling exhausted. Like I just really physically and mentally always felt tired.
Okay.
And I would ask myself, like, why am I so tired? Like everyone else seems to be very happy in this religion doing whatever they're doing, knocking on doors and going to church like 3 times a week. And I was doing like the most, like I was like full-time volunteer. Like if a Jehovah's Witness sees this, like I was like what they call a regular pioneer,
A regular pioneer.
Yeah, that's what they call it. Yeah. And then, but I mean, that really involves dedicating at least 70 hours a month of like door knocking. And the thing is that you think it's very important. So you prepare for like these like encounters with like people. You're in essence doing cold calls and you want to convince them to join your religion. Right. So you read all the material. So that also involves time spent. It's like you go to the church meetings, you prepare to go door to door. You prepare for the people that you actually convince to have a Bible study with you. That's a lot of time spent. Like, and at the same time you're working, you have like a job because everybody needs money in this capitalist society, Yeah. So you're still working. Sometimes I was going to school and I was doing this like full-time volunteer work. So obviously I'm exhausted.
And doesn't a percentage of your income also go to the Jehovah's Witnesses? Am I correct in that?
Well, they ask you for volunteer donations, like, contributions is what they call it. But of course, I mean, I have so many instances where like they pry in your private life. Like, I mean, if we have time for it, I'll tell you like a brief story. Like I decided to buy.
This time is yours. And this is already amazing. So please
So I bought a car, but at the time when I bought the car, I got like a really good deal on it. And it was an electric vehicle, like completely electric. This was like 5-6 years ago.
Cool.
And I got it for like $9,000. And when I bought it, like my parents, my brother, and even the church elders were like, why are you so worried about the future? Like the end of the world is coming. Why are you trying to buy like the newest version of like technology? Why are you trying to buy this car?
Wow.
And the only reason I bought that car was because it was really cheap. And I figured that what I was spending on gas was the equivalent to my car payment so that I can afford this new car because I wasn't going to like really spend more money.
Right.
So they told me at some point that like, if I had money to buy like this latest piece of technology, I surely had enough money to like contribute more to like the organization.
That's incredible.
I know. So they don't tell you like you have to give this much, but they do definitely guilt you by like prying into your life.
Wow. That's incredible.
So like stuff like that happens, but they don't give you like a percentage or like a minimum,
You hear a lot of the sort of the horror stories, if you like, of some people within religions, and Jehovah's Witnesses no less so. I mean, they can be incredibly aggressive and invasive, and there are lots of very unpleasant stories from the Jehovah's Witness world. But in many ways, it's almost the little subtle things that are like that are constant, I imagine, and that. Gosh, I mean, just that. What it just seems like somebody buys a new car. That's like a happy moment for them. Yeah, hey, you got a new car. How cool is that? And they turn it into a lesson about how you're not giving enough money to the church. That's
exactly.
Really quite...
And how like that is also something that they do to say like you don't have enough faith in the church because you're like practicing like worldly point of views.
Right.
I was being practical. The other car I had didn't work. Like it was over. Like I had that other car 10 years. This is a car I could afford. And I was like, just being sensible because I knew gas was going to go up eventually.
I mean, is it not always? Yeah. It's a fairly good bet.
Exactly. So I just thought it was the most sensible thing to do in my circumstances.
That's incredible. So there are so many different things I want to ask about right now, but it's like opening up in front of me, and I know I'm really bad at keeping on track. So I want to hear about your experience then, like going. So you were, was it a pioneer? Did you say?
Yeah. That's what they call it, regular pioneer.
A regular pioneer. Is there an irregular pioneer? Is there a?
Yeah, there is.
Oh, wow.
They call them. Yeah, they always give people all sorts of titles in that organization. I feel that it kind of just reinforces the idea of like control and like gives you some kind of status so that you feel you're closer to God than someone else. I think it also encourages policing,
yes,
like within that church. Like if someone sees you doing something else that's like has this other title, like you feel more embarrassed.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all very toxic.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah, no, you know what? I would lean in that direction. Okay, so you're a regular pioneer. You're committing 70 hours a month to the church. You're door to door advocating, giving money. When does this stop working? You're exhausted, which makes perfect sense.
So so like I tell the church elders, I'm like I told them honestly, I was like, I'm so tired. And I told them I'm starting to feel that my faith is weakening. Like I'm having a really hard time believing that God wants me to live like this, constantly tired and feeling like I have no other purpose in life besides knocking on doors.
Great.
And I felt guilty feeling that way because, you're a woman, so you really don't have any other purpose besides doing what a man tells you and knocking on doors, like that's it. Like that's all you got as a woman and as a Jehovah's Witness. You're never going to be a church elder. I remember asking if I could be a missionary and they said I couldn't because I needed a spouse. Stuff like that. Yeah.
It's a not uncommon thread. I was speaking, if you look at my channel, there's the conversations with Mormons that I have, you could just swap Jehovah's Witness for Mormon for a lot of this stuff. Yeah. Like it's exactly the same attitude towards women. It's kind of remarkable that it's and slightly depressing.
And so when I spoke to the church elders about it, I even spoke to my dad about it because he was a church elder.
Oh, okay.
And everybody was just like, oh, you have to pray about it. And you just have to study the Bible more. That's what they would tell you. That's all they tell you. And so, of course, I thought it was like the right thing to do. So I would pray more and I would read the Bible every day. And so they would tell you to study the Bible more. So that means to look up Jehovah's Witness literature that gives you some, jargon explanation about why these prophecies are real. Right. But sometimes what they do in some of these magazines is like they borrow like references from books that are like not Jehovah's Witness books that are just like secular books. Mm-hmm. But of course they only pick secular books that like accommodate their teachings. So I thought that if I looked up these secular books and like saw them for myself, that would help reinforce my faith in the Bible. And if I looked up more secular books, they were all going to say the same thing because I didn't think the literature was lying.
Right.
But then they have like this one core prophecy about 1914, and they get to this number by saying like the destruction of like Jerusalem and when like Babylon came to be and they have all these numbers, right? And so the number they always hold on to is like 605 BC. But according to like actual history books in general, it's not 605 BC. It's like either way before or way after. And they just have this big window of like when that happened, when like Jerusalem was destroyed. And so I was like, so that made me feel like, oh my God, like this is just not true then. Then 1914 can't be exact. And so reading that type of thing made me like question a lot of things. Right. And so I said, and then the Dead Sea Scrolls came by and these other Jehovah's Witnesses were like, oh, we should go see them. It's like actual pages of the Bible. When I went to that museum, I saw the same dates were off, And so then I asked, I remember my brother was with me and I asked him, I was like, well, why are these dates so off? He's like, well, we can't trust, like worldly, fountains of like knowledge or whatever. And I was like, and that still stayed with me. Like it did bother me.
That's quite an admission, right?
Yeah. And so I was like, it would worry me. And then around this time, I'm like over 30. I didn't get married because they told me not to have kids, because they told me I should be focused on the preaching work. And so like I'll say it, like I was pretty lonely because I didn't have a lot of friends that were my age. I didn't have a spouse. Everybody was either really old or really young. So I did a lot of stuff on my own. So another day I went to another museum. There's this museum in LA that used to be like a Masonic temple. and
Whoa.
they kept one of the rooms with like all this like Masonic like literature and things they use for their like rituals. And there's even like a glass where it has like, you know, the signs of like the Masonic people. But they have like all their literature. I was looking at it and it looks very similar to like early Jehovah's Witness literature. And they even have like similar names. Like Jehovah's Witness literature had this thing called like the Golden Age. And then like the Masonic literature says also something about like the golden something. And that also made me think, and I was like, wait a second, like they always tell us that Jehovah's Witnesses come from the Bible. And I also questioned like, well, what is really the origin of Jehovah's Witnesses? And so I went on the internet and I looked up if like, you know, one of like the original like first Jehovah's Witnesses was like from like a Masonic person. And they were. So Charles Taze Russell was actually a Mason. And I think Rutherford was also a Mason too. And that also explained why the literature was like so similar. Yeah. So that also made me think about like, well, then isn't everything a lie? You know, like
that's a great question.
You know, like the prophecy isn't lining up. Like the origin of the religion they aren't being honest, you know? And, you know, all those things made me question a lot of like the teachings. And then sadly, like there was a member of the church that like physically like assaulted me.
Oh, wow.
And so when that happened, it was like really like shocking because I thought like everybody that was a Jehovah's Witness was a good person, you know? But when that happened, I told my parents, but I was really embarrassed because I told them, I was like, well, maybe I was too nice to him and he thought I was interested in him. And that's why he decided to like, you know, do what he did. And they were like, no, this is just like not wrong. Like your parents were just like, didn't know what to do, but you're taught to talk to the church elders about it. And so when I finally told the church elders about it a couple of days later, they were like, well, we didn't see anything. So if you're lying, you're going to ruin his reputation. And so I mean, like, well, what about me? You know, like, what am I worth? And so I got really angry over it. I got so mad because like nobody did anything about it. And it's like, well, why isn't nobody upholding God's laws? You know, so then that's when I definitely realized all of it was bullshit. Yeah. Because from that situation, like this man started coming to my house, like knocking on the door, trying to leave me presents, would wait for me outside of the house. Like whatever the reason was, like that he was like, you know, constantly harassing me. Like, it's not okay. I don't care if he wanted to say sorry. It doesn't matter. Like he should have just left me alone, you know? And well, my parents were just like, well, you know, you have to be loyal to the church no matter what. And that also like disappointed me a lot. Because I was like, how am I going to be loyal to this church when like no one's keeping me safe? No one. So then I just like ran away. I just left my house and never came back.
I wish this was an unfamiliar story.
I know.
It's horrific in isolation and so much worse when you realize it's not uncommon at all, mm-hmm. unfortunately.
But it's not uncommon because of like their rules.
Of course.
Everyone is so interested in making Jehovah's Witnesses look good when you're within the church. Like to you, that's the most important thing. You can never make the organization look bad. And if that means you have to like suck it up, like people will do it. But I couldn't do it anymore.
There was a chap called Christopher Hitchens who used to say, I don't know if he was quoting somebody else, but he said it often enough that I think he sort of maybe it was his original, but he talked about the idea that in a world there will always be good people that will do good things, and there will be terrible people and they'll do terrible things, right? There's just the nature of the world that we're in. There will be people in the world that will try to harm and hurt and cause misery to others. But in order to get good people to do evil things, you need something like a religion. A religion can get good people with good intentions to just things that you couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anybody coming to me and saying I've been assaulted, and my first concern being anything other than the person that's just told me that just, and I don't think I would say this in any way to exonerate the response of the church or your parents or anybody that was involved. But it is a horrific sign, I guess, of how far the indoctrination and the brainwashing has taken them, that's their first consideration in this. For example, like I look back at it now and they teach you to shun people that leave the church. Of course, yeah. You know? And so now that I'm on the other side and I'm like the person that no one talks to, and like now I understand how hurtful it could be, and also how brainwashed you were, you know? Yeah. Yeah. It's I mean, that's an incredible story. And I'm so sorry that you went through that. Like, it's hard to really know what to say. I mean, that's an awful experience. I mean, as well to feel that it's falling away from you anyway, because of lots of silly things, the claims that don't make sense and don't connect to reality and information from the outside, and then realizing how much you've sacrificed for this entity. I always tell people, therapy. You need therapy. I mean, I honestly, I think it's incredibly, and again, just even to take that first step of doubting a position that you've been brought up always to believe is true and committed so much of yourself to believing is true. I think that's incredible that you were getting to where you were going anyway, from your own work, I guess. Intellectual honesty, I think, is what we would call it, right? You were being honest about what you were seeing and reading, and reflecting on what that meant about what you believed. And I think that's incredible. I mean, to say that you are, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, honestly, to say that you're only now discovering critical thinking, because it sounds like you were very much along the right lines, well before, street epistemology started to enter into the conversation. So, wow, gracious. I have so many questions, even more questions than I had before, and that was already a long list. But I guess what I would like to ask, what advice would you give to anybody that's maybe there's somebody like a version of you that was like, has just started to Google a few things, right? And maybe they come across this video and no doubt are going to be skeptical about some of the things you're saying. But is there anything you would want people to know that are in that position? What would you say to them? That maybe, it's really hard because, like I said, I was there, I was brainwashed. But I think the number one thing that I did that I regret doing was that I always ignored that gut feeling that you have that something's wrong. Right. Like the whole time, because even the part of the Jehovah's Witness teachings is to ignore your heart. And they always villainize your heart. They always say the heart is the most treacherous thing you have. And so they villainize your own inner voice. And that's really just like taking your personality. That's like taking your sense of self-worth. And I don't think anyone should really do that. And so I think that if I would have not have ignored it, I probably would have been out even sooner. And also to remember that they show you so much propaganda, all these videos about how everyone in the world is bad except Jehovah's Witnesses. And you see all these images constantly and you read about it. And then when you're actually out in what real society is, not everyone's a bad person. And it's okay to talk to them. It's okay to see another point of view. And if I would have taken that step to just kind of prove it for myself, are these people really bad? Or what they teaching us actually true or not? Then I don't think I would have gotten out. If I wouldn't have allowed myself the possibility of being wrong. Because if Jehovah's Witnesses were right, I would still be there. But I'm not. Well said. I think that's incredible to say to somebody that, because basically by saying not to trust your heart, you're saying your intuition, right? They're talking about your rationalizing, your internal rationalizing processes, your understanding of the world. They're saying, don't trust yourself, trust us.
Exactly.
It's interesting to think maybe for just a moment, how many evil, terrible, and horrific organizations out there that you as a Jehovah's Witness might acknowledge do exist in the world. And what if you belong to one of those and were being told the same thing? Like, would you, the sort of the classic go-to evil bad guys would be the Nazis, right? So say you're a member of the Nazi party, right? And you were starting to have doubts about maybe what the Nazis were doing. And they would turn around to you and say, hey, but you can't trust your heart, right? You can't trust your instincts on this. You just got to trust us. What would that lead to? I mean, I guess from the outside looking in, it seems so obvious, but at the same time, I can totally understand why from the inside looking out, it seems scary and treacherous to even consider that there might be something wrong. And
yeah, like the last time I had like a full conversation with my brother, and my brother moved just recently, like before he left New York. He moved to New York to be closer to that organization's headquarters. That's why he moved to New York.
Wow. Right.
And when he was maybe a couple of weeks before he left, he wanted to talk to me before he left, because he's like, oh, I'm not going to have a chance to see you and really know what's in your heart. Like, of course, they're just trying to make me come back. And so we had this really long conversation, and that's one of the things I asked him. I said, well, let's say you meet somebody going door to door, and they tell you 90% of their religion is things that they learn in their religion are good, but there's this 10% that's really bad. And then they have a bunch of bad experiences. Wouldn't you tell them to consider a different religion? And he's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, but they're positive. So how long do you think they should stay in their religion to make sure it's a good religion? What do you think? 6 months, 2 years? Pick a date. And he's like, I'm like, well, and I told him, what if someone got physically hurt or mentally abused or anything like that? How long do you think they should stay in that organization to know that it's wrong? And he was just like, no, well, we can't apply that to Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm like, why not? Why not? And he was just he didn't know what to respond.
Was that conversation before you encountered street epistemology, or was this? This was
after.
This was after.
Yeah, so definitely, I gathered skills from street epistemology.
I'm hearing it. I'm hearing it coming out here. This is fascinating. I love it. That's great. Yeah. I mean, what? This is one of those really wonderful. It's really interesting to notice when people are doing this, and it's called special pleading. It basically says there are rules, there are ways of behaving, there's rational things to do in the world. There's ways in which we should know things and the things that guide our behavior, except in this one case, in this special place where the rules don't apply and that we have to treat this differently somehow. And it's called special pleading. You're basically saying, okay, I accept this is true for everything else, but not here. Here is his special magic conditions, and it's a noticeable component of many people's beliefs in different organizations, groups, and religions, and it's a really, as a street epistemologist and somebody getting into street epistemology, it's a really great thing to challenge. Why? How do you know this is a good place for the rules to be broken? What's giving you the confidence that this is a great place to change the rules? The
other question I've asked my brother in that same conversation was, I told him, okay, so if we want to prove something true, then that means there's a possibility that it's false, right? Right. I go, so that means we have to look for a way to prove it wrong. But if it's true, we're not going to find it because it's going to hold up, right? And he would be like, okay. I go, so that's what I did. I told him, I allowed myself to question my beliefs with the full intention of proving them right, but I didn't. I found the lie, or I found the error. Right. I go, and so I tried something else, and this has proved to be better. I go, so I told him you should extend that same opportunity to yourself, to your wife.
That's a great way of putting it. extend that opportunity. I like that. That's very true. And it is about self-emancipation, isn't it? It's about, empowering yourself to be able to see the world as it is, not as you want it to be. And I think, again, that it takes more than the problem that some people might find is that they might look and they might see the problems, but they might start to rationalize them away. And that's a thing called motivated reasoning. It's when somebody has got a strong motivation to assume that the thing they believe is true, and therefore try to find a way to make it fit with the information they discover. So when you were looking at the dates and trying to make them square with what you've been told through the Jehovah's Witnesses, you were being what I would describe as intellectually honest. You were comparing this number with this number and saying, okay, well, they can't both be true. And the more numbers you were finding that were just disagreeing with the Jehovah's Witness literature, the more you started to lose credibility, or lose confidence in the Jehovah's Witness literature. And that would be what I would describe as intellectually honest. You were seeing the weight of external evidence not matching the internal reference point. A lot of people within religious and it's not just religious, but religious or religious-like organizations will operate this principle of sort of motivated reasoning, in the sense that they will start to explain away. They'll find very contrived possible explanations for all of the external differences. And they will they'll use this sort of either magical thinking or just leaps of irrational conclusions, all kinds of different things to internally continue to justify their internal belief. And I think if somebody is persisting in maintaining their motivated reasoning and are not willing to be intellectually honest and genuinely explore, open themselves up to the possibility they might be wrong, it can be very difficult for them to do that. But I think street epistemology has a good set of questions that I think will help people recognize that maybe there's something they want to explore. But I don't know that you, and I think this is something you alluded to at the beginning, it's not always something you can do for somebody else. You have to sort of, it's the leading the horse to water and not making it drink sort of problem, I think. And sometimes you just have to be patient, I suspect. I wish there was a better.
Yeah, I think like the biggest problem with like my parents and my brother is that sadly they're like expecting me to like fail and come crawling back to them, asking them to like bring me back to the church because that's what's going to make me happy. And they're not seeing that. Like there's been times where like my mom has said like, oh wow, you're like happier than I remember. And I don't want to like rub it in their faces. I want to be like very civil with them, that like, and the only thing I've ever told them is like, well, I'm the same person. I just don't want to go to the meetings anymore.
Right.
I'm like still like doing the same things I wanted to do. I just do them more openly and freely now. And I feel like I don't have to be a different person. I just don't go to the church anymore. That's all it is. It's the only difference.
So, with regards to the person you are now, do you still have a faith belief? Do you still feel like you have a relationship with God, or
like a higher power or something?
With a higher power, yeah.
When I first left the church, I realized that my self-esteem was really bad. And I also looking at the whole thing about like ignoring your like inner voice or your like gut feelings of like things that keep you safe, like also come like, because I started going to therapy right away. I realized that like I didn't believe in myself to do anything. Like I always felt like I had to ask someone. But because you're trained like that in the church, like ask the church elders for life advice, ask your dad before you do anything. Even if you're an adult, like you still have to, like as a woman, you're kind of like trained to ask for someone to let you do something. And so I decided that if I don't believe in myself, I can't believe in anything else. Like how am I going to believe in like a higher power God if I don't even like think I can get any job I want? Or I believe that I should keep myself safe, or I could pick where I want to live. Like really basic things other people do. Right. I felt like I wasn't entitled to them, or I didn't know how to like acknowledge what I wanted. So I figured, well, first I have to believe in myself. I have to love myself first before I start like adopting any other like ideology that might take that away from me.
Great.
So, I mean, I've read the Bible like beginning to end multiple times, more than in like, and I always think like that means something because Christians like have so much faith in this and they've never read the whole Bible through and through, many of them.
No.
Like I could say I've read interlinears, like
I've never even heard it. What is that?
Oh, so an interlinear is like, it's like word for word, like translated like the Hebrew or the Arabic into English so that you can like for sure know what the Bible was saying.
Right. So it's not like the James the First edition. This is the hardcore version.
Yeah. So this is like, a deep study Bible type of thing. So that, so I even read those type of things,
Gracious.
So like I've read all those things already and nothing's proven to me that like there's no proof against it or really for it that God exists, Right. There's nothing that absolute. So I'm just like not gonna I'm just waiting for real proof is pretty much is what I tell people.
That's a great answer. I love that so much. There's a beautiful Latin expression which I think is one of those little gems that it's always worth remembering and taking to heart, and it's nocete ipsum. And nocete ipsum loosely translates to know thyself, know yourself. And I think I love what you just said. I think it's so true that before we can really start to unpack all of the complicated ideas of the world and like we need to understand ourselves and that I think a lot of people don't realize how much work that can take to do. And I think maybe it comes a little easier to some than others, but I think with everybody, I think it takes work. And you can go for quite a long time in life, I think, without recognizing that there's work to do there. And that's something I can certainly reflect. That's been my experience. I lived a long time before I suddenly thought, maybe I need to spend some more time thinking about how I think and feel about things. And just working on that as a project and thinking about like how I can come to terms with who I am. There's huge amounts of value with that. And then, to imagine the huge work that gives you to do. And then also the huge work to understand where you might be in relationship to an omnipotent, omniscient entity that's somehow massively not existent or present in your life in any way, but also massively apparently controlling all of it and importantly, relevant to all of it. I can't even begin to imagine it. And it definitely feels like Jehovah's Witnesses have gone out of their way almost to rob you of the opportunity to understand yourself. And
well, yeah, definitely. Like that's like one thing I've talked about in therapy before, how Jehovah's Witnesses really like rip you from having any identity, right? Because they constantly tell you that you're a Jehovah's Witness, that you have to act like a Jehovah's Witness, that God only loves his witnesses. So anything you want to do or anything that's like maybe like part of your own personality, they tell you to get rid of it and you can only do what certain scriptures say. So they're even like, there's like these extensive like public talks on it where they go to like from like, the congregations and they talk about it. They're like, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're this way, this way, this way, this way. Are you all of these ways? Otherwise you're not a good Jehovah's Witness. And of course you have the idea that God's going to destroy you with the rest of like wicked humanity. So you strive to be this like perfect image of a Jehovah's Witness and you forget about anything you like.
Because it's all going to end soon, isn't it? The Jehovah's Witnesses for the entirety of their existence have been patiently waiting for various different dates to arrive and see them pass. And it doesn't destroy the religion. Every time the dates tick past and, oh, okay, I guess we were wrong. We've just discovered it's a bit later on. It's kind of a remarkable, I don't really know if it probably is termed a religion. I guess more frequently I hear it referred to as a cult specifically. I don't know where the distinction is sometimes. Maybe there isn't much of one, which might be rather telling.
Yeah. Like I've heard other people call it like a high control group. And I think that's an active like description, like a very good
Right.
description.
Yes. Yes. Cult has a very difficult definition, and I definitely would agree that at the very least it's a high control group. Yeah, I think so. So how's life now? Like, how are you finding things? And like, because one of the things about leaving a religion, one of the things I try to make sure people understand about religion and atheism as ideas would be that atheism is no replacement for a religion, right? Religion will control every area of your life, like whatever it is, like to a greater or lesser extent. But like even the sort of more mainstream, so like let's say less high controlling organizations, will still have a huge amount of say about how you live your life and what you should think about certain things, and they'll tell you what you need to know. Atheism has got zero. I mean, it resets the clock on everything, right? So I can only imagine how much you suddenly realize you have to now discover for yourself and figure out for yourself once you leave one of these things. So how's that been for you, and how's that project going, I guess?
So I think one of the, like I said, learning to like take ownership, I guess, of like everything I do. And I think that's also something that, I've talked to like my brother about, like, I'm like, well, I just don't believe in God anymore. And he's like, well, you have no purpose. And I think that's like a common thing that a lot of like people that believe in God think, that if you don't believe in God, you have no purpose. And
of course, yeah.
And I've told him, I'm like, I think I have a bigger purpose in life now, that it is to not just only make my life better, but everybody around me, with no like hidden interest or agenda. It's just like, I'm doing it just for the sake of life. I'm not waiting for God's paradise to be good or for me to do more good things for people. Like, this is just me now. I'm just going to be a good friend to people, build my own community around me, because, I lost mine. And in a certain way, I lost my family, like I can't count on them, so now it's like rebuilding everything so that I do feel safe and I do feel loved and that I have friends and like interests.
And I can't imagine how that doesn't feel more worthwhile to be a good person and not believe that you're doing so because you have to be, because somebody's watching you. You get to choose whether you want to be a good person, and it's so much more rewarding when you discover that you do want to actually be a good person anyway. And they will tell you, I'm sure they have told you, that you are still just internalizing God's will in some way, and it's still but it's
I think that's also a thing. Like, I remember that maybe after like the first year I had left the church, I had entered like a barista competition, and it was like worldwide. Well, because that's what I do for work. I make coffee.
Well, and it was like, this is going so well. I'm a big fan. I'm a fan of your work. That's great.
So like I had entered this like worldwide barista competition, and just to get in, like you had to like do a video and qualify. And so people from all over the world were like applying. And on a whim, my boss was like, you should try it. You should do it. You're really good. He's like, I'll support you. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So we make this video and I apply and I qualify. So I make it to this like coffee festival. It's like worldwide, like I'm picked among like, I think it was like 15 people, I think, of the world that they picked.
Wow.
And it was like really fun. It was so fun to like see everyone else perform, because like you're on stage for almost 2 hours, just like making coffee and talking to people. And at some point, I had like the Spanish speaking channel here in LA, like, film me making a pour over in Spanish at this like coffee festival. And I had invited my parents to go that day. I was like, you should really come to this coffee festival and see what I'm doing, like that I'm really good at my job. And so they end up going and they see all these things happening, right? And like random people are like talking to them, are like, oh, we know Malvina. Like they're like saying like really nice things about me, and after everything's like done and like, I'm like, well, aren't you like proud of me that like I'm still like doing a good, like, I'm still like making it, And I remember they tell me, they're like, how do you want us to approve of you if God doesn't approve of you? We can't approve of this. And so that's like one of those moments where I realized that I was like, you know what? Like there's nothing that I'm ever going to do that's good enough for them. Yeah. And it doesn't matter.
I feel so sorry for them. I mean, like, what must it have done to them that's how they would respond to this? I mean, That's horrific.
You know, so like that's like one of those moments where I'm just like, you know what, it doesn't matter. Like I just have to do my best, live my life the best way possible. And like, you know, that's all there is.
Self-pride. I mean, pride is, again, one of those things that religion often seems to want to disparage in people, but you know, you should be proud of that, you know, and you were proud of that. And
Yeah.
it's its own reward, right? It's, you know, just to enjoy the moment and it's difficult. I mean, again, this is one of those reasons why we shouldn't allow ourselves to fall into the trap of allowing others to validate us as human beings, right? We have to celebrate ourselves and be happy with what we do. And that goes for like everything. Like people making YouTube content, for example, there's lots of people in the community that, like, you know, make YouTube videos and stuff, and they're constantly kind of concerned about how well it's doing and like what they should do to, like, you know, make it better. And it's like, well, the only thing you really should care about is that you're enjoying making the videos, right? That really is the only thing, because honestly, if you enjoy making the videos, then you're not going to care if anybody watches it, right? Like, I know that sounds kind of like, well, of course we're doing it for the views, but then you probably shouldn't do it, right? Because that's a miserable road to walk down, like, to get that validation from these strangers. You know, it's really, really worthwhile recognizing that, you know, this is your life and you should be enjoying the journey, right? Yeah. And if you're not enjoying the journey because you're hoping either other people will approve of you or because there'll be some future validation for you, but right now you've just got to, you really should consider what you're doing. It's a real mistake. And
yeah, like having responses like that from them only like confirm that, like, all those things are like, I don't need to be part of a religion to be happy.
No.
And also, like, if God exists or not, well, it obviously doesn't matter, because when I did believe in him, I wasn't that happy. And now that I don't believe that he's here, or at least I haven't found proof about it, I mean,
you're at an international coffee convention. I mean, like,
I'm better off. You know?
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you. One of the things, I don't get to talk to former Jehovah's Witnesses enough. And it is an area I have a little bit of knowledge about, but it's not one. I would really love to have another conversation with you, if you'd be up for it, where we could maybe talk about the, like, more mechanistic aspects of the church, because whatever I think I know is probably wrong, and it would be really great to get, like, your firsthand experience of it. Would you? I should ask you this off stream. Like, would you be up for doing, like, another video where we could talk about that in more detail? Because I think it would be really useful to hear it. Would that be something you'd be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's useful for people that are probably, like, having doubts already. Yeah. You know, because everyone just assumes that when you leave the church, it's because you did something wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and they always announce from the platform, like, when someone leaves. So no one really knows why they left.
Oh, I've seen that. Yes. Yeah.
So they're like, you know, so you're ostracized, but really nobody really knows what happened to you.
Yeah. And they're encouraged, of course, not to ask. And that's what I think
sometimes too. That's, you know, like, I've had people come out of the woodwork, like, you know, that I hadn't talked to in years, and they'll be like, I heard you're not a Jehovah's Witness anymore. If you would just repent for your sins, you know, God would take you back. And I'm like, how do you know I did anything wrong?
Right.
What did I do to not believe in it? Have you asked yourself that? What if I told you I left on my own will? You know, and that's, like, I think that's a really big thing to talk about. You know,
yeah,
like,
I really want to. As I say, it's a fascinating area, and it's one that I am too ignorant of. So I would love to talk more about it. I think, yeah, I mean, it's sort of very telling, isn't it? This person has left. Now you must never speak to them. And if you just think about why that might be,
that information control.
If you have the absolute truth, you know, and you know it's true, what harm could there be in speaking to that person? What possible harm could there be? It's almost saying too much by saying you shouldn't speak to them, isn't it? Really, it's almost tipping their hand. And Malvina, this conversation has been absolutely fantastic. I definitely would like to do another one. I'm sad and disheartened, sorry to hear the horrible experiences you've had, but also genuinely hearing how well you've done afterwards and your journey and that's incredible. So I thank you so much for sharing it. I hope you'll still remain part of the street epistemology community, and please do. I don't know if we said this on the. I think we might have spoken about this before the camera started, but you were talking about being a bit shy, sort of jumping into the conversations. Yeah. But please do. We need more voices like you jumping into the conversations on Discord. But I can well understand how that can always feel a little bit intimidating. But if I really hope you get to find the courage and jump in sometime, because like it would be great to hear more from you. But yeah, I'd love to do another video. And yeah, again, thank you so much for doing this. Is there anything else that you'd like the community to know about you before we end that might be fun for them to know? Or any, I mean, being an international renowned barista is already pretty much up there.
No, I mean, it's just, I like making coffee. That's all it is.
Me too. I've got more coffee making equipment than I should have by a fair margin. And I don't even make 1 cup a day anymore because I'm trying to cool down on my caffeine intake, but god damn do I miss it. Okay, well, fantastic, Malvina. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been awesome. Let's catch up again soon.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.